Now, there are certain celebrity talents that have carved out niches for themselves through playing to their strengths. For example, if you want an amazing narrator, then you want to hire Morgan Freeman. If you want a balls-to-the-walls crazy action man, then get on the phone to The Rock. And if you want to be turned on and repulsed at the same time, then you can always give me a call. Yet, that doesn't mean that there hasn't been some really seriously odd casting choices throughout cinematic history, when directors and casting agents have just thrown caution to the wind and taken a punt on an unknown or completely unexpected actor. And that's exactly what we're going to take a look at today. As always, I'm Jules, this is WhatCulture.com, and these are the 10 most ridiculously absurd casting calls of the 21st century. But before we begin, in the spirit of being fair, I'm going to tell you why these acting choices were weird, but also tell you whether they still delivered, regardless. Okay? Right, let's get on with it then. And number 10, Tom Cruise, Jack Reacher, 2012. So, in the books, action hero Jack Reacher is described in the following terms: 6 feet 5 inches, weighing 200 to 250 pounds, and having a 50-inch chest. In other words, he's the size and shape of a WWE superstar, and pretty much the exact opposite of movie star Tom Cruise. Nevertheless, he was cast mostly because of his previous form as Ethan Hunt in the Mission Impossible movies. Now, if you think it's just me being picky, then fans of the books actually also cried out about the casting choice, which weirdly prompted creator Lee Child to say Reacher is just a metaphor anyway. Oh, okay, I guess screw the fans then. Well, you know what? Because Tom Cruise is a brilliant action star, the film is full of adrenaline-pumping moments, and none of the issues with height would actually affect people who'd never actually read the books. Hence it being at the top of this list, as it's definitely a film that didn't come up short for Tom Cruise. Puns, I've still got them. Number 9, Emma Stone, Aloha. Who do you hire when you're looking for an actor to play a character who was 1/4 Chinese and 1/4 Hawaiian descendant? Well, apparently you cast Arizona-born Emma Stone, of course. At least you do if you're Cameron Crowe anyway. In Aloha, Stone plays Allison, whose mixed ethnicity and confusing outward appearance was supposed to be an active part of her characterization, but there's no getting around the fact that it would have been way smarter to simply hire someone of the right race. So did it work? It did not. The whitewashing controversy was the least of Aloha's problems, but it absolutely didn't help. But then, even if Stone had been the right race, she would have been saddled with some pretty trite material that saw the film sink to a very poor critical response and a dismal financial performance at the box office. Number 8, Elijah Wood, Green Street. Weirdly enough, for a fair few years, the British film industry became obsessed with the UK football hooligan and the grimy underworld gang culture in which they exist. And one of the better and weirder films was Green Street, a film that saw a straight-laced American seduced by the call of football, booze, and punch-ups. And who should play the role? Well, Elijah Wood, obviously. Well, I mean, they got the straight-laced part right, but it was so out of left field to believe that he'd make a good rough-and-tumble gang member. However, it kind of totally worked, surprising everyone in the process. Don't get me wrong, he's not convincing enough to be taken as a new Hollywood hardman, but against a more stylized take on the subculture, he fitted in rather well. It's one of those films that you'd show to your friends, and for them to just be like, wait, why is Frodo bashing that guy's head in? And also things like, well, why the hell didn't he do that to Gollum in the first place? Number 7, Russell Crowe, Les Miserables. Well, this one was just mad, right? When one of the biggest stage musicals of all time comes rolling across to the big screen, I bet none of you out there thought you'd see Russell Crowe's name attached to the project. The man has played gruff, intense characters all throughout his career, and outside of his band hasn't done a lick of singing on screen. Yet here he was, the gladiator turned audible orator as "And I'm Javert," and is now forever etched into that film with his live singing. It was utterly mental. So, does it work? Well, here's the thing. It's actually quite a dividing issue, as I will admit that Crowe can sing. It's just his voice, his tone and approach to singing does not work for Les Mis. The man became a meme for his delivery, which has been called too forceful and without care, and it's arguably the worst part of this film. His acting is fine, but his singing just isn't for me. So in the grand scheme of things, no, I'd say that it doesn't work. However, I think that many were also annoyed that none of the large roles were given to anyone who actually worked on the stage shows, something which would have provided a much more on-message product. Anyway, at least Crow was slightly better than Pierce Brosnan in Mamma Mia, right? Number 6. Aidan Turner, The Hobbit. Hollywood has a thing about making people more attractive. It's just what they do because no one actually wants to look at regular uggos like you or me in the cinema, right? Well, hurt feelings aside, it does make for some weird casting moments, especially when you look at The Hobbit and Aidan Turner. Now, when you think of The Hobbit, you think of short men, hairy feet, little stingers cleaving manky flesh and swiping gold from sleeping beasts, aka Last Tuesday with Your Mum, there's my one per list, but you probably don't think of hunky dwarfs. Yet that's what we got in Turner's performance. Dwarves were supposed to look like Gimli in Lord of the Rings, and there was even an established aesthetic for them from Tolkien's own descriptions. But because Peter Jackson needed a romantic lead in The Hobbit, for some reason, he brought in Turner to play the impossibly beautiful version of Killy. But did it work? Well, that's debatable, because it's easier to believe that Toriel would fall in love with him looking like that, but it was so apparent and on the nose that it stood out like a sore thumb. I guess it comes down to whether or not you even care about the love subplot in the first place, and I did not. Number 5. Adam Sandler, The Longest Yard. When you look back across the actors working in the mid-2000s, there were a lot of options for convincing American footballers, and while the quarterback is the most flexible position in terms of physical expectations, I mean, the ideal height is meant to be like 6'5" and 240 pounds thereabouts, but you know who it isn't? It's definitely not the 5'9", slightly soft around the middle goofball comedian, Adam Sandler. And yet, he's the one that was cast for the 2005 remake of The Longest Yard, despite the fact that he had already found his correct position in football when he was the water boy. It was just so weird being told that he was meant to be a hard man, despite looking like, well, if we're honest, a bit of a doughboy. Well, you know what? The Longest Yard is not all that bad. It's definitely not as good as the original, but it's certainly better than the British adaptation. Sandler actually turns in a good role and is able to let those that are truly physically intimidating, aka the WWE stars, do a lot of the extra work. So it was an odd choice, but it wasn't terrible. Number 4. Gary Oldman, Tiptoes. Unbelievably, in 2003, Matthew Bright cast Oscar winner Gary Oldman, a character of huge repute and a great method man, as the twin brother of Matthew McConaughey, who played Stephen, who was the only normal-sized son of that family. That's right, not only was Oldman cast as a person of diminutive height, but he was cast as the twin brother of Matthew McConaughey. Ludicrous on 2 huge accounts, right? So, did it work? No. The film was roundly criticised for insensitivity, and though Oldman is typically dependable, this came in his fallow period, and it's not exactly one that he or Matthew McConaughey will be shouting about on their CV anytime soon. The suggestion that the pair could be twins at all is just about the most ridiculous thing ever. Number 2. Angelina Jolie, Alexander. Now, casting great actors sometimes takes precedence over little things, like logistical things like paying attention to how old they are and how they might impact the story they're actually at the heart of. That can be the only justification Oliver Stone could have seen for casting Angelina Jolie as Queen Olympias to Colin Farrell's titular hero. She's obviously talented enough to take the role, but the problem is that she was a grand total of just 2 years older than Farrell when cast to play his mother. Now, people obviously do have children increasingly early, and it was a different time back in ancient Europe, but it's not exactly like Olympias gave birth as a toddler. So did it work? Well, the public and the critics didn't think so, and openly critiqued the choice of casting as well as the film overall. Had the film been better, I'm sure that people could have looked over this, but as it stands, it was a bit of a stinker. And number 1, Paul Rudd, Ant-Man. There's no doubting that Paul Rudd is one of the most likable actors currently working in Hollywood. However, I think that we can all agree that it was a massive surprise to see him cast as a superhero. Not in a million years did the affable everyman figure from This Is 40 and Knocked Up ever seem like the right fit for a martial arts using, abs having MCU hero. And yet, he was chosen as the man to play the criminal with a heart Scott Lang for Ant-Man. And did it work? 100%. Rudd is so great in Ant-Man that he helped it survive the well-publicized production woes that saw Edgar Wright leave his role as director, and it's impossible not to be utterly infected by his charm. He trimmed down and bulked up with muscle, and he was way more than just a charming figure too, packing believable weight behind the action requirements. He's low-key one of the best things about the MCU, and while his fate is now in the balance at the moment, I can't wait to see him return for another Ant-based outing.